Hey guys, welcome back to Partner Pairings. Today I'm joined by Aubrey Gralapp, founder of Rising Dental Solutions. Now, Aubrey has experienced dental practices from just about every angle, right? Working chairside as a dental assistant to leading practice operations and now coaching dental practice owners and teams. And so today we're going to talk about something that sounds simple, but can completely change the way the practice operates. And that's the morning huddle. And Aubrey, one of the things that I really appreciate about your approach is that the morning huddle shouldn't be just, one person standing there reading off information while everybody just kind of waits for it to be over. You believe that everybody should own a piece of it. And so let's start with that. Let's start with the big picture. When you walk into a practice that either isn't huddling at all or is just going through the motions every morning, what do you typically see happening throughout the rest of their day?
Yes, great question. It's almost like an unspoken disconnect in a way, right? Little things happen, things get missed that potentially wouldn't have gotten missed if we had a collaborative conversation around it in the morning huddle. And so small missteps and oversights to really big schedule clogs and things like that that can happen throughout the day when we just don't have that bit of team preparation involved, so we all know what everyone is doing.
Yeah, what are they missing that they may not even realize that they're missing?
There's a couple that's a great question. There's a couple things, like one person knows something specifically about a patient where they may have treatment outstanding that they don't want to do. And another team member comes in and is all ready and excited to do it, where if we had prepared for the conversation and teed one another up better, we could have had a more fluid experience for the patient, as well as just those little moments when we need our doctors to flow through the schedule in a specific way to make sure that
Yeah.
he or she can get to everything they need to get to within that small amount of time that we can typically have in the schedule.
Yeah. And I think of a lot of offices, I would hope a lot of offices would say, hey, we already do a morning huddle, Aubrey. Now, there's obviously a big difference between having a huddle and having an effective huddle. So,
Mhm.
what does a great huddle look like to you? And how do you get away from the office manager being the one who's responsible for running the whole thing?
Yes. Yeah, it can be many different team members that just stand there reading through the schedule. Even if we're having a team approach, I've seen where practices, each specific team member will be reading through their column and just like reading through the services, right? And so
Mhm.
what we really want to do is hit those high trigger points of what's going to make our day the most effective and successful. So that looks like everybody knowing that they're bringing something important to morning huddle, not
Mhm.
that it's just something they need to be present for.
Yeah, so let's make that really practical. If everybody owns a part of the huddle, what should different members of the team actually be bringing to the conversation?
Right. I think it's role-based in most practices, right? So if
Yeah.
I'm an administrative team member and I might be bringing to the morning huddle some different information about a new patient on the schedule because I spoke to them on the phone, or depending on the way we have things structured in the practice, I might need to notify the team if there's a specific patient I need to speak to about finances. And for the clinical team members, there's different parts that can be really important. And hygienists having a moment to talk with the doctor in the morning huddle about treatment concerns for specific patients. So it doesn't mean that the hygienist needs to go through every single patient on their schedule. What that looks like is there might just be a few patients on their schedule that have specific treatment needs or concerns. And I'm going to share with my doctor ahead of time, here's what I'm going to say to this patient about this outstanding treatment before you come in the room, so that we can have a real fluid conversation when the doctor comes in for the exam and help the patient understand what's going on.
Okay. Yeah. So we talked about front desk, admin team member.
Mhm.
We talked about maybe treatment coordinator, hygienist. What about like assistants and
Assistant.
doctor?
Yeah, the assistants are, um, they have this great view of the schedule, right? They see it like nobody else can see it because they understand where their doctor needs to be and when. And so there's a couple key components for them, specifically looking at any lab type concerns that might be coming up ahead of time. But really, when we talk about making the day more effective, they're really going to tell us those key points when the doctor needs to be in specific places at a specific time. And they can also bring that same type of conversation to the doctor that the hygienists do about a patient's treatment.
Yeah.
A patient might have something specific that needs to be addressed that they've been delaying on, and they might have a close relationship with that assistant. So the assistant is going to tell the doctor, hey, I plan to bring this up with my patient at 1 o'clock today before you come into the operatory. So maybe we can help him or her decide to move forward.
Yeah. And the doctor, what is their role in that morning huddle?
So I really like for the doctor to hear those key components from the team member about the conversations with the patients, right? Because the doctors, depending on how busy the doctor keeps their schedule, they're going from one patient to another. So pausing for a moment for the doctor to have time to discuss with the hygienist in the morning meeting or the assistant about a patient's treatment needs. And then the doctor say, there might be something specific they remember about that treatment or that tooth, so that the two of them are on the same page. That's the main
Yeah.
goal. And I think it's really important that the doctor ends us or wraps us with something really exciting, or every team has a different way of doing it, right? They might do a chant or a huddle or something, but just something that uplifts the team right before you release everybody off into the day, I think is an important part of the doctor's job.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, hey, give them that motivation to get excited, kind of open the doors with that excitement.
Mhm.
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits of your approach of accountability is that, instead of because quite frankly, it's usually the office manager, but instead of the office manager chasing everyone around all day, the team is starting their morning really knowing what needs to happen, right?
Mhm.
Um, how do you turn the huddle from simply like sharing information to actually making a plan for the day?
Yeah, great question. So there's some coaching involved for the team members. There's a couple team members that can see it really clearly, but it really comes down to coaching them on how to ask each other good questions, right? So that they can have a conversation. Because even if we may tell a team member, okay, take a look at your schedule and practice numbers the night before, it's going to tell you any of those patients that have unscheduled treatment. We'll use that one again. Um, and they just read the patient's name and the tooth number of what they need. That's not going to be the type of conversation that gets us where we want to get at the end of the day. And so it may look like the hygienist asking the other hygienist, because she saw that patient last, what did this patient say about that treatment?
Yeah.
The doctor might have some insights, or even the assistant. But if one provider is just going into that appointment without that full understanding, then they can't have a conversation that's tailored to that specific patient.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. And I can already hear someone listening saying, "Hey, this sounds great, Aubrey, but our first patient's at 8 a.m." I mean, how long should a good huddle actually take? And kind of my follow-up to that, what absolutely does not belong in
Yes.
it? Okay.
So there's a couple factors to the amount of time, right? How big is our
Yeah.
schedule? How big is our practice? But I think a huddle should be less than 10 minutes. I think especially if we're not where the huddles can really get bogged down is when we are reading through them. And then we might be talking about something not related to the patient's oral health care, oral health care on the schedule. We're talking about something different about, oh, they just went on a vacation or something like that. So I think that's something that doesn't necessarily belong in the huddle for that part of your question. But if we're just hitting those key points, that's going to help us tighten up that huddle to ensure that it's most effective and that we're also starting our day on the right foot. We're starting our day focused. So if we're starting our day talking about the different nuances of our patients on the schedule, we're talking about different parts of our weekend or things like that, then maybe we're not starting into our day as focused as we could be.
Yeah, those types of conversations should happen, as your team members are coming in, when
Mhm.
they're putting their
Yeah.
personal belongings, in the break room, storing that away, kind of getting ready before the morning huddle. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I've heard horror stories of like, hey, we don't do them anymore because it was just staffing drama, or it
Mhm.
was exactly what you're saying, reading every single person's name, um, or it became like this was the time to talk about like the unresolved issue that that needed a more one-on-one conversation or a much longer time
Mhm.
frame. So having that focus and really focusing on the patients coming in that day, I think that's a key point. So awesome. Well, for the practice listening whose morning huddle is basically, one person or multiple people just reading the schedule while everyone else drinks their coffee, what's the one change that you challenge them to make tomorrow morning?
I would challenge everyone to involve the entire team in the conversation. So if you need to start small and you ask each team member to bring one point to collaborate, but to ensure that every team member is bringing something to the conversation that's going to help our day run smoother and be more effective.
Awesome. And finish the sentence for me. A great morning huddle should leave every team member knowing.
It should leave every team member knowing exactly how the day is going to unfold and how they're going to pivot if it starts to unfold a different way.
Yeah, because it will, right? Like, inevitably, like, very rarely do you have that perfect day that just, everyone shows up on time, every procedure takes the exact right amount of time. So, having that flexibility and knowing that, awesome. Well, the biggest takeaway for me from our conversation today, Aubrey, is that the huddle shouldn't be something that just happens to the team, right? Everyone should have a role, everyone should contribute, and everyone should walk away knowing what they can do to make that day successful. And so, if you want to learn more about how Aubrey can help your practice, you can visit Rising Dental Solutions. It's an easy website to remember, just risingdentalsolutions.com. Aubrey, any final words?
I think that you're right. Most practices stop having a morning huddle because it had a negative effect. But you can have a morning huddle that's positive and effective and sets the tone for your day the way you want it to start out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I hope more practices um, do take the steps to really create that ownership of for every department, every member of their team in their morning huddle. I think they'll find that it becomes an integral part of their day, something that they just can't start the day without. So, Aubrey, thank you so much for joining me, sharing some really practical ways in how offices can make morning huddles more effective.
Thanks for
And
having me, Rebecca.
yeah, absolutely. Till next time, y'all.